Andy Muschietti and Barbara Muschietti, and a discussion about Alyse's book about about the hit horror adult film, It. Not a kids movie. It's not really a kids movie, I don't know. Based on Stephen King's classic novel. Alyse is a graduate of USC Film School and has worked as a reporter and a television critic and has a love for all things horror and sci-fi, which makes it a perfect mixture. Sister and brother duo Barbara and Andy Muschietti produced and directed, respectively, the film It, which became the highest grossing horror film of all time. Not a kids movie. It gives me chills to welcome Alyse, Andy, and Barbara.
Well, I think we know you. You're responsible for all of this. So, well, first of all, sorry, I'm sitting in the middle, so I feel like I have to start this. Thank you for coming. We couldn't be prouder of this book. It took us years to make it, because when we did chapter 1, we really wanted to make a book, but no one knew what the film was, so they were like, no, we're not gonna make a book. But then, you know, you guys came and saw the movie, so we got to make a book. And
it took you years to make the movies, and it took me about 3 weeks to write the book. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not true.
Built on sweat.
Built
on sweat and blood.
Yes. So let's start things off by, if you guys want to talk about what the It story means to you guys. I know you're really big Stephen King fans, and how it's kind of played into your life.
So what it means, I'm a huge Stephen King fan ever since I was a boy, a kid, and so Stephen King always meant a lot to me growing up. I learned a lot from him, emotions, you know, many of his work, especially It, spoke to me about like the things that I was going through at that time. You know, I was barely the age of the losers when I read It for the first time. I wasn't 11, but I was like 14, and I was in love. So I already was a veteran of horror at 14, mainly because of, you know, movies that my parents thought were appropriate to show us when we were 6 and 7. Other literature, other books. You know, Pet Sematary was my first Stephen King book ever. So I was already in shock and super excited about him, and then Clive Barker appeared, and then, you know, a bunch of other writers that I kept very close. But Stephen King was always at the top, and I consider his work to be a part of my education of telling stories. When people talk about the wide range of tones that the movie had, you know, and how did you do to combine like humor and horror and emotions and stuff, I would say for me it was always like very natural, because that's what Stephen King does in his stories. So all those tonal swings is part of the DNA of his stories and the way he writes, style. So for me it was an alien. For me it was not a challenge. And I always wanted to, you know, basically make justice to the spirit and the soul and the heart of that story. So it just didn't feel right to, well, I never thought of it actually. But there were other versions. There were, like, as you know, like this movie has been in development for some time, and there were other directors that had other, you know, other visions. I read earlier drafts where the movie was a full-on horror drama. There wasn't a bit of humor in it, and I said, no. I had to put some humor in it. Anyway. So there's more.
Your sister talk.
Now my answers will always be a tenth of Andy's. So, and by the way, we're in the soap section, so it smells really nice here. The soap in the soup. Very clever. No, so I also I read it. I'm 18 months older than he is, so I read it when I was about 15, and it was the first time that, you know, I was a very avid reader, and I would read very adult books. I read The Tropic of Capricorn when I was like 12, which I should not have done, but this was the first time that I read a book with characters of my age that were going through really adult situations, and it empowered me, you know, what they managed to do and how they managed to fight evil, and it truly changed me. It changed the way I faced, you know, the world, basically. So I will forever be thankful to King for writing that book, and then for giving us a career. So
So you guys, there were obviously, this has been in development for a long time. How did you go about, I guess, getting the job to direct and produce? Who did you have to kill for this job?
Well, I'm not going to say that here. Talk to my lawyers. So after Mama, we did Mama, a movie called Mama. Thank you.
I love
I saw the clap and went on. And after that, yeah, it did pretty well. You know, it was a story that we wrote, so it was an original story and script, and so it was very much of our own. And after that, we came to Los Angeles. But you know, we had like a couple of projects going on. We were working on The Mummy, when Mummy was a cool movie. It was the beginning of a new universe of monsters, a dark universe of Universal, which is something that I hold very dear. And I thought that, you know, what was a great idea to bring a vision to these monsters that was actually scary. But they didn't think it was a good idea. They thought that it would be like more like a Marvel. So they took the wrong example of the thing. But in the meantime, we spent like, I don't know, 10 months working on a movie that had like we had, you know, very different visions, but meaning creative differences with the studio. Anyway, long story short, we spent a long time trying to make a movie, and of course, when you do something that works in this industry, immediately you start like getting a lot of external propositions and you know, projects and stuff. So you get into that dynamic where you start like dancing with the, you know, with studios and projects and scripts and ideas and blah blah blah, and you sort of like leave your work a little bit to the side, because it's like, you know, you also are sort of incited to do something as soon as possible, and this works and it's ready to go. Anyway, long story short, I was like probably 2 years without shooting after Mama, and always on projects, but projects, you know, they fall apart for different reasons. And eventually, and it was you know, a development that was on Warner Brothers with, as some of you guys know, it was Cary Fukunaga who was going to direct. I don't know how much you know about the story, but Cary was doing his own. He was going into his own very dark explorations, and the studio wasn't totally aware of what he was doing, or there was something like that. Eventually, it didn't work, and the moment when we found out that, you know, that Cary was leaving the project, Barbara called our agents, and said, we have ideas. So 1 week later, I was pitching my vision of the story, regardless of whatever script they had there, and they bought it. And that's how it happened. Thank you.
So I guess this is kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but you've mentioned that you're working on a big extra version of It and It Chapter 2, or is it just Chapter 2? What can you tell us about this?
Everything.
What will you tell us about this?
It's not. It's not that it's confirmed or anything. We're in the middle of talks with the studio about what that is. But I can tell you what I want, which is a big, super, gigantic, long cut where everything that I shot is there. Everything that I planned for to be in the movie, and both movies are there. So it's I call it supercut, and it's like 7 hours long. You don't have to see it all at once. You can, but come on, you spend like hours in front of Netflix watching and binging. So yeah, I think you can pull it off. So this new version would have the two movies together with everything that was deleted, all the scenes that were deleted from it. Some of these scenes you saw probably in the extras of the first movie. You saw it digitally, and all the deleted scenes that from the second one, you will not see them because they're not there. I'm waiting for the supercut to put them there, and also I want to shoot a bunch of new scenes because I can't stop. Don't.
Let me tell you. No. So yeah, no. I think it's an intention. We would love to do it. We would love to do it. We'll see.
Andy would love to do it. It's okay. You can say.
I don't know. You promise things and then you start playing the guitar and they don't happen. So I just don't know.
It doesn't happen. It's not because I'm playing the guitar. The guitar. So no, there's like you when you're putting together the story, the movie version of the story, you have to make compromises for the sake of pacing. You have to basically remove things or straight not even writing them because there are things that are not essential to the pacing and the moving forward of the story, but they're very important if you love the story and if you love these characters. So for me, there's like at least 3 scenes that are very important that I really want to shoot. Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't even shoot them?
No. I didn't shoot them, but they're coming. They're coming like a train. They're coming like Bill Denbrough flying into the macroverse at that speed. Richie in the movie, in the book is Bill. Well, Richie saves him. It's complicated. Anyway, I can talk a little bit about that, but the macroverse is the content of those scenes. Anyway, I will tease it. Do you want to know or no? Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. I just get excited. I'm sorry. I'll tell you in private.
I want you guys to feel the joy of seeing something new. He tells it it's gonna be flat, so don't tell it. It's a surprise.
Okay. All right. Does this mean we're gonna have to add a new chapter into the book?
Okay.
Can I say something?
Oh no.
The book is amazing. I think it's better than the movie. The book, as a document, it's beautiful. And I never it happened to me. I mean, of course, I know everything that is in that book. I knew it from before, but seeing it all, edited and compiled and written, and the writing and everything, it's a great experience for someone that loves movies. I think it's super exciting to have something like that. And having said that, there is material to make like 10 books of those, to be honest.
That's true.
There is there's 100 more storyboards. There's even like sketches and documents that didn't make it in the book because of course we have like the boundaries that we all have when we make a product, like a movie. It's just like that. But I don't even know what I'm saying this, but the same way there is a supercut, maybe there's a super book. Thank you.
Please start.
All right.
Get started, Alyse.
Can you guys share any kind of fun behind the scenes stories from the set?
Sure. Where can we tell them? Be brief, please.
Sadly, the most funny we cannot tell because it compromises actors' integrities and stuff. But they were very funny. Maybe in private. But there was, in general, like Bill Hader is a maniac, and in a good way, and he is always making everyone laugh, even when the cameras stop. So I would say like, every day there was something that was going on that was so fun. I can tell you something that without saying any names. When you make a movie, when you're directing a movie, there is, especially this one where there's like so many actors and so many, personalities, and we're all pulling towards the movie into the same direction. But it's so complicated to make a movie, and there's so many nuances and instances and little movements. And the truth is that it's not until you're on the set, it doesn't matter how much you talk about a scene or a through line or an arc or a character or whatever. It's not until you are in the set that new ideas start to appear. Especially because the geography changes. You can when you rehearse with a bunch of actors, you normally do it in a space that is nothing like the location or the set that will be finally in the movie, which normally they end up like building like a day before or something. So suddenly you're there, and it doesn't matter what you rehearse because also you rehearsed like a month ago. The truth be said. So that's in all that space. Things change, things shift, new ideas appear in heads of actors, director, everyone, and there's a new geography. So imagine like making a movie with 6 leads. It's already complicated with only one, in which you as a director have to express what's important on the scene to the actor, but also be open enough to let him or her, let them feel free, and also contribute to the scene if what they're saying is good enough. But you have to judge if what they're bringing is good or bad at that moment, and you don't have a lot of time, right? Because it happens on the day, on the set. These little nuances and this little, I think I should be drinking a whiskey on that scene. So I don't think I would be sitting here. I would be there. That kind of things. Funny thing that happened is that apart from that, we're like framing for 6 characters. It's not easy. It's not an easy task, and there's always blocking. There's always blocking a face that blocks the other ones. Professional actors know very well how to avoid that. They just they unblock themselves without looking at the camera, of course. They just pop up from the head that is blocking them, and there's a lot of moments like that. And it's not their fault. It's not my fault. It's just like having to frame for 6 characters. There's always like little adjustments that are funny when you look the movie in that way. Probably you won't even notice if you're like just watching the movie. But now that you all watched it, I imagine you can watch it again and stay alert on those like little heads that pop up and they go back to position. That was very funny to see, and. There was a lot of funny things happen regarding personalities. All in all, I can say that it was a very fun experience. Not only because of Bill Hader, but everyone like was very excited to be working on, except for some days where sparks would fly. But it's only natural. When you're doing a movie and you're working 86 days on a row with a bunch of people all together, it's like, oh, I think if you let me do this, I would have more freedom. Like, yeah, but you have to stand there. It's not your scene. Anyway, no names. You had enough time to think of what other funny thing happened.
Endless, but what we'll say, because you started saying Bill Hader, and then you went into this speech. It was not Bill Hader, the one with this issue. No, Bill is the best. What's funny? I mean, we just there's no actors going to Jimmy Fallon and tell about the pranks that they do on set, which are all bullshit. I mean, none are real. It's true. But the writers, write them for them, and then they, I made them dance of Macarena. It's not real. But we, I think. More than funny moments, it was just a fun set, because the kids were there, and the kids, this is serious, these kids had their lives changed forever in chapter 1, not necessarily because of the success of the movie, but because of that summer they spent together, and they're all brilliant kids, and as most brilliant, truly brilliant kids, they didn't have, they weren't particularly popular or had their group of friends back in their places, and they found together. They found each other during that summer. Their lives, went nuts. They all became crazy professional stars, and actually the hardest thing of chapter 2 was getting them all together, because they were all doing jobs in different parts of the world. But when they were all together on set again in chapter 2 years later, they would regress completely. So you would find, the sophisticated, you see Finn, on, Sunset Boulevard doing Yves Saint Laurent, doing fashion billboards and with his band. But when they're together, they're literally like, one day it turned the corner, we're all on set, and I honestly don't remember who was doing this. It was 2 of them, but one was like burping onto another's one's nose, so this kind of Jack, yeah.
Like Razor with Alyse Eddie. Yeah.
But it's and still when we see them all, we see them all the time. They get together, in spite of their crazy, schedules. I think the parents make an issue of getting them together, because they've been so important in each other's lives. And when we can, we join, and it's absolutely wonderful, because I mean they really go back to when they're kids, and now they're like, Finn is 6'2", I think, it's just they've grown. Jeremy now is, his gonads have dropped, and it's like, so.
I don't know how to follow that up. What are you guys working on now? I know you took some time off, and
barely any time off. It's not enough. We were really tired still. We're working on several things. There's probably one that's gonna happen next year, 2020. With Warner Brothers, but we can't say yet, because it's their stuff. But I mean, we are definitely going to be making a movie.
And can I write the book for that one?
Yes, of course. No, all this team has to make the book for the next one. No, for sure, of course. I can't let him speak for this question because he starts going off and then we get in trouble.
Will it be horror?
No, not. But I mean, 90% no. If it will be horror, which we're not. We love horror and we'll always do horror, but I think the next one won't be horror.
Okay. Were you just getting tired of doing horror, or you wanted to spread your wings a bit, or?
No, and I'll pass the microphone to Andy for this. But we love movies, and horror, is one genre, and we'll continue exploring that. But we also want to do other things. It's.
Yeah, telling stories. I like to think that I'm versatile storytelling, and if not, I want to try, But it's really regardless. Of course, like horror is a big love of mine because I had like a love story since I was a kid with the genre. But all through my life, I've been like sort of like loving all kinds of different movies, especially when the infatuation for horror. There's a point where it comes down. Probably when I went into film school, I started watching other cinemas, and I fell in love with Italian comedy from the '60s, and so comedy for me is very important. I don't think I see a lot of horror. I see myself making a lot of horror movies without humor. But whatever genre it is, I think there's a reason to make movies, which is like talk about emotions and make people move, touch people and move them. It's the only reason I go to the movies, because that's what I'm looking for, like deeper emotions, crying basically. There's nothing stronger than a movie as an experience than a movie that makes you cry. And it doesn't happen a lot. So when it happens, it's like to be able to do a movie that makes people cry is an incredible achievement, I think, accomplishment. It's always a deeper experience, because if it makes you cry, it means that it relates to you in some deeper level, or universal, level for what matters. If you make everyone cry, but for me, it's very important. Emotions, crying doesn't need to be a negative experience, a negative emotion. It's just, you can cry with a happy ending. I'm about to cry now. So, yeah, I don't know. It's like there's something that happens in your childhood. It's not an accident that we're making like these kind of stories, but there's something that happens in your childhood with movie experiences that it doesn't happen again. Of course, you want to do it again. You want to feel it again, but you're an adult, so you're everything that, when you're a kid, like you absorb things in a different intensity. It all goes like deeper, and even though you don't have the life experience, it just suddenly like explodes in your heart in a way that it doesn't happen anymore. So I know how it feels. I know how it feels because I was when I watched movies like Black Stallion, or Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. Those moments in cinema where you feel like you're about to explode. It's nice to be the one that is doing it now for the newer generations. So at least if you can't like feel it yourself, you can live vicariously through others, and it's a good job to have. So, answer to your question, Yeah. Katie, thank you. To your question, yeah, I'm interested not only in horror but in other genres. The important thing is that it moves you.
I'm just going to make a little side note, but we just watched a film that I think got us both very emotional, which was unexpected. It's not a Warner Brothers film, sadly, but it deserves a mention, which is 1917. When it's out, guys, go watch it because it's such an amazing journey. And I hate war movies, but it's about the storytelling. It's wonderful.
I guess we can open it up to questions from the audience. Yes, you. Yes.
Okay. I actually have this question since I read the book. How did you figure out what to cut from the book because the story is so large?
For the movie?
For the movie, yeah, for the movie.
So there's, it's not that difficult in terms of when you understand that it's a different medium and it's a different language. The book is massive and it's epic and it's a loser in a way, no pun intended. When you make a movie, everything has to be tighter and each scene has to be a consequence of the previous. So when you have that in mind, everything sort of falls into place, and you just have to know or understand what's important in the story and in the emotional journey of the characters. I can't describe all the process because I can't even remember everything that happened, but we did a great job with No. Can I finish? Working with Gary Dauber, man. I'm bringing Gary because he was a screenwriter in the first movie, and it was a work of basically just translating this format into movie format, knowing what makes a movie exciting, helps you, sort of. Decant, I'm sorry? Distill, yeah. There's a distillation that happens almost naturally when you know what's important in a film experience. Also, it happens in a very longer time. The book happens in a longer time. There's a lot of events. Stephen King wrote a lot in that book and many other books. He likes to write. He likes to describe things. He likes to immerse you in not only human emotions, but also in the slightest of details that are not always relevant to the story. You remember reading the story of Patty Uris and all her traumatic experience being a Jewish woman in a basically a white waspy community, and it goes on and on and on about her, and she doesn't really play much in the story, but he got excited because he's a guy who understands humans and he likes to dig deeper and deeper and deeper.
And who can publish a book at 1138 pages? Most of us humans are not allowed.
He describes now. I remember I'm going to the extremes, but it gives you an idea. When he describes the murder, the shooting of the Brady gang, or the Bradley / Brady gang in the 1930s, he starts talking about the bullet and the gauges of the bullets and everybody, because there's a shop, there's a gun shop involved, and it goes for hours and pages and pages.
On the tour of Maine that they talk about all that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with the SK tours that you guys went on.
Yeah.
We went on that too, so it's on picture.
So you went to the street where the Brady gang was killed.
I know exactly what part of the book too.
It's amazing. For good or for bad, Stephen King likes to write a lot, and those are immediate lifts for us when you're going to a movie, because it's what's relevant and what's not.
But one thing I'll say about the adaptation first, when we landed, this was already planned out, which was to make the book into 2 movies because it's so large. So that was the first step. And this is something that I think we've never mentioned. When we got into the project to do chapter 1, there were 2 characters that had been merged, and I'm so happy we unfucked that because it would have been, terrible. Who was it? Richie and Eddie?
Richie and Stanley.
Richie and Stanley. Yeah. Yeah.
So Richie was the Jewish kid.
So no.
His name was Richie Tedesco. So he had a bit of an Italian Jewish name. Tedesco in Italian means German.
Yeah,
So it was a weird combination of things. And it's just like, oh, let's bring Stanley back.
Yeah,
Let's bring Stanley back.
uh,
Someone just fainted. I'm sorry, we'll keep it less emotional.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I don't know how true this was. I read an article about potentially Freddy showing up in the movie, the first movie, and with the rights and stuff coming available. Was wondering if you had any interest in directing that now.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about Freddy.
And as when he becomes the werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger in the movie.
Yeah.
As an incarnation of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was no rights problems because there was Freddy is a New Line character. So there wouldn't have been any like rights or clearance problems. I just didn't want to put Freddy in the movie. There was a moment where I was sort of flirting a little bit with, okay, these incarnations are pop culture, horror things from the 80s. But there was something that didn't feel right, about it. They weren't scary enough, I think. And I always thought
Andy
that
likes to create. You like to create your own monsters. I think so.
create monsters, but I also
Your own monsters.
Well, the thing is that to be honest, I was a big fan of Freddy Krueger, but I don't know how to make it super scary. And I thought there were scarier things like creatures and stuff that actually scared me when I was a kid. I don't know, the girl in the painting, whether you like it or not, is scarier for me because I had a Modigliani painting in my house, the print, and it was those are the things that if it scares you, then you're on the good path, I think, because it means that it scares someone. And yeah, the other incarnation, I thought of giving it going deeper and deeper, a little more layered. Unlike what Stephen King does, which is basically the kids' fears are almost all the monsters of Universal, the universe. You have the Mummy and Dracula and Frankenstein. They're all there because it was the kind of things that scared the kids from the 50s, So yeah. So no Freddy.
It's my understanding that you're both prolific readers since we were in a bookstore. I'm wondering what your dream project is or next book that you want to adapt. Could you say?
Whatever that says.
I'll answer first and then you go. I think right now we are still very prolific readers, and I come to this bookstore all the freaking time and leave with piles of books, and then I do Audible too because Stephen King does it, I can do it too, and I'm allowed. But I think we can never say never, and we'd love to do more adaptations, but also I think we have our own projects that we need to put a little love on. Andy has some crazy ideas in his rotten brain that we need to explore further. So I'll tell you one book that I would have loved to do that actually is being remade now in a massive format, which is completely unrelated to the genre. It's The Fart Pavilions, but it's a book that I grew up with and I loved so much, and I can't wait for, to see that.
I agree with Barbara. Like we haven't written like any movies since Mama, and I'm very driven to like going back to writing original stuff. Of course, influences movies I would like to make. Like that I still to this day. Truth be told, I've been reading it for the last 5 years. The same book for the last 5 years, so it didn't really leave me like time to be a prolific reader anymore. But The End of Eternity is by Asimov is a story that I love and I always loved, and I like to one day like try to make it a movie. It's a time traveling story for you. All you who didn't read it, is very recommendable. And there's this one of my favorite Latin American writers, Roberto Alt, was it's from the 30s. There's a lot of his literature that I'd like to adapt into a movie that could be like translated into English and make it universal.
We grew up with a lot of our reading was Latin American, like fantasy, which tends to be very grounded, and we would love to do some Quiroga, or there's truly some.
Horacio Quiroga is a writer that writing back in the turn of the century, 20s to the 20s and up to the 30s, I think. Crazy horror, it was always real horrors, like the horrors of man versus nature, and man versus the jungle, especially. It's beautiful, and horrific stories. There's one called
La Gallina Degollada.
The Feather Pillow.
Feather Pillow, the headless chicken, the Feather Pillow.
That's it.
Well, anyway, no, but we would definitely recommend that if you are into reading, and please tell me that everybody's into reading, because I can't imagine a world without reading. Just pick up some Quiroga. It's stories, and they're a breeze to read, and they are just unbelievable.
Any other?
Yeah.
What was it like shooting with Stephen King?
He was very nice. He's a very nice guy, very fun and very easy also. And he already liked the first movie very much, so he was like, he was there, and he was like almost like a fan. In fact, when I hadn't met him until we finished the first movie. Yeah, so on in between chapter 1 and 2, I wanted him at least to get his feedback from what we're doing for chapter 2 and the script and stuff, and he came back. He gave me back a list of little things that he would like to see in the second movie, but it didn't look at all like, oh, this guy wrote this book, because it was so long ago, and I'm sure, like, I mean, how many books did he write in the after it? Do you think he probably doesn't remember a lot of it, or once he finished, he's like done with that? It doesn't mean that he doesn't love the story, but I think he's in this new adventure. He likes the movie, and he doesn't like to think a lot about the book. But he gave me a little list of things that he would like to see in the second one. But they were pretty much like a list that a fan of the book would write. Like, I would like to see. Yeah, I would. He wanted to see the standpipe rolling down the hills.
Paul Bunyan mostly.
Paul Bunyan, but the one that not shocked me, but it was like, oh, that's cute. At the end of in the book, for the ones who read it, there's a big flood, and basically Derry sinks into a big hole, and everything floods, and everything breaks, and the standpipe explodes. The standpipe is the tower, the water tower, and it just like detaches and starts rolling down the hills. And there's a stoner that is watching the whole scene, and he's like, "Whoa!" That was probably an alter ego of himself. Watching, whoa! And he says like literally he says Spielberg. He was like his dad, Steven Spielberg, or something like that. As he sees this, because it's a big catastrophe moment. So that was one of, and then Paul Bunyan. He wanted to see Paul Bunyan, and Paul Bunyan was half there because in the script we had adult Richie, dealing with Pennywise on top of Paul Bunyan, but the scene where Paul Bunyan chases young Richie wasn't there. So it was one of those things that, I'm glad that Stephen King brought it up because I really want to do it. So he went back. What else? I can't remember.
No, but he's amazing because he's so, he's in his early 70s and his brain is intact in spite of everything he's done against it, which he's very open about. Kids don't do drugs, we asked him to come and shoot this cameo, and generally for a cameo, somebody stays with you for, an afternoon, and he came into this tiny, tiny town where we were shooting, Port Hope, and...
Did you say cameo? Don't say cameo again.
Sorry.
Doesn't sit well with Raoul.
He came into Port Hope, which is this tiny, tiny town 2 hours away from Toronto, and stayed with us for 3 days in this little local hotel where the crew was staying. He came with his grandson, Ethan, and it was the best. He's just a really it sounds like bullshit because he's probably the most successful, prolific American author there is, and he's just,
One funny bit that when he came in, because there's a lot of quotes in the book. What's this fucking rock and roll? I'm having a blackout right now. He's wearing Harvest Moon by
Neil Young.
Neil Young. So Neil Young, it is peppered with Neil Young all over. Every chapter starts with a Neil Young song quote. So I thought, okay, so Stephen is coming to do a cameo, and we're gonna lay a little Easter egg there, and I'm gonna put in the Harvest Moon shirt. And when he got the shirt, he's like, I don't like Neil Young. What? And that was it. But it's funny when I call him, why so many quotes of Neil Young on your every fucking chapter of 8 has a big, epic Neil Young quote. But when I asked him to do a cameo, he's, I like to do it, but you have to consider that I'm a jinx. I'm a big jinx. Every movie I once did bombed. He said it with humor, obviously, but because he's very funny. But I said, okay, I think we can turn that around. Yeah.
So ever since the book came out, there's been this discussion about over Richie and Eddie and their relationship, and even when there was the 1990s series, the actors were like, oh, okay, looks like there's something more there, and you actually decided to make it more more explicit. I was wondering, did you catch on to that type of aspect of their relationship when you were reading it, when you were filming it? When did you decide to add that in?
It's funny because you brought it up as something that is more to the surface, that is very obvious, and there's a lot of people that say that it's not obvious enough, or they don't understand that Richie is gay in the movie. you just So I got a sense, a very subtle sense of Eddie being gay and reading the book. But definitely it was something that was never consummated with Richie. In the process of, as I said before, when you're translating this huge piece, literary piece, which has a lot of more layers and nuances, into something that is a little more, compact. And given that Eddie had a strong, history of trauma with his mom and overprotection and germophobic and whatnot, and he marries his mom basically. And Richie didn't have much, If you see even in the book, you really don't know what Richie's family was like, what his trauma is, even though you can assume that he had a set of parents that neglected him, and that's why he had to be like the clown of every moment, where everything is like, he's expressing himself, over-expressing himself, and telling jokes that nobody laughs at. So on the process of making a movie, I thought, okay, we're gonna bring some of this into the story, but give it to Richie, and it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense to me.
But I remember when I read the book and I was 15, I remember the precise moment of reading, the scene, Eddie's death, in which, Richie touches his cheek, and the way it's written, to me, was, okay, there's love here, there's extra love. But then, even, talking to King, he says he didn't write it like that. So I guess, we all interpret it the way,
Yeah, I remember mentioning that Richie had like a platonic love for Eddie, or platonic or not, it wasn't consummated, but it was definitely gay.
He said Richie wouldn't fall for Eddie.
Richie in love with Asthma Boy. No, I don't think so. It was very funny. It was a very funny moment, but eventually we did it, and I think it's great. It's a great, profound, character trait and personality thing and childhood trauma, because he's like, he's a character, probably the strongest, I don't know. It's a character that has been basically hiding his sexual identity for all his life. And you see why, and when people ask me why, is it so rough, the first scene with Adrian Mellon, I'm like, we are basically setting up the world in which people like Richie lives. So we're validating, why someone like Richie is, scared of opening up and living his life.
But it's been fascinating to see the strength and the size that the Ready movement has taken, which is it's amazing, really, because clearly you see, okay, there's been something missing from the screen, from books, for a long time. Because, I mean, really, even yesterday I was looking at some of the fan art of Ready, and it's insane. The fan fiction, there's whole stories of how Eddie doesn't die and they go off into the sunset. It's fantastic. It's,
Who thinks Eddie doesn't die? That would have been great, actually.
Any other questions? Yes. If you were to have the option to make it into a TV show, would you take it?
Yes. Definitely. And that's not a...
We've been talking about it. Not. I mean, yeah, but it's, you know, this is something that
I'm very excited about making it into a show, into a TV series, and probably expanding the mythology of that is in the book through the years. Like, it has been around for 1,000,000 years, right? So I was excited about it. Arrived to this dimension or Earth like 1,000,000 years ago or millions of years ago. Been interacting with humans for 500 years or something. So imagine like the amount of, it wakes up every 27 years. So imagine the amount of stories that can spawn. I'm very excited about the mythology and exploring it into a longer running format, like a series, TV series. Yeah.
Is that one of the projects you guys are working on?
well, I mean, there's a bandwidth to our humanity, so we kind of have to. But this is
No, but it's
something that
definitely
we'd
one
like
of
to embark
the
in.
ones that we're more excited about. Yeah.
We have to talk to King about it.
Yes, back there.
You talked about your cameo with Stephen King, and there was an item, a prop, that it was very particular in the shot. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what is that symbol?
We are from Argentina, and Argentina we like football. Sorry, soccer. I'm a big fan of Independiente, which is a football club that is 100 years old.
And it has nothing to do with the performance of your team. It's what comes with the blood. You know, whatever team your parents belong to, they pass it on. You're screwed, you know, in that sense.
Yeah, Independiente was it's called the king of cups because we won a lot of things, but you know we're not one of the biggest teams ever. Well, I don't want to bore you with Independiente. I would just say that it was founded by anarchists 100 or so years ago. That's why it's a red shirt.
And it's Independiente, independent.
Independent.
Anarchy,
So yeah, there's nothing anarchic about it like now, really, because it's all business in the world of football or any sport. So I had this mate. In Argentina also we drink mate, which is an infusion with a thing and a metal straw. So people in Argentina are all like sucking into this all day.
Uruguay too.
And Uruguayans too. What?
I think we need an example of what it looks like. Maybe my friend can give you a little example.
Oh. This is a surprise?
A mate?
James McAvoy would say, so this is a surprise?
Oh, that's
surprise?
amazing.
Oh my
That's
God.
amazing. So that's
Hey,
that's the
thank you
shape of
so
a mate.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is what the mate looks like in the movie. You probably saw it. And it says, okay, so it
But
was
it's
not-
like strong
Thank you.
herbs that you put water in.
Very strong.
And,
Makes you go to the
know.
bathroom. Very, it's stimulating also. So it works on every end.
Oh, Andy. Oh, okay. We have one more question. We're being told. So.
One more question. Yes, you.
I was just wondering, in terms of like Stanley and Eddie's death, how did you like plan originally on going about them? Because obviously Stanley's is kind of just how it's written, and then in terms of like Eddie's, were you planning to just go with how it's written in the book, or kind of play around with it a little bit?
About their deaths, you mean?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah, no, I always felt like that they had to go.
Yeah.
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 No,
Yeah.
but I think what you're asking is the death scene in the book
Yeah,
compared to
yeah.
the film,
Yeah.
the way you shot it and you imagine.
Well, you know, I wasn't a big fan of the spider. Just talking about Eddie's death, I wasn't a huge fan of the spider the way it was, which it was literally a giant spider with the anatomy of a spider. And I think in the book, Eddie comes and like sprays his inhaler, which happened before, like 27 years ago. He succeeded. Now he's doing it again and puts it in the spider's throat, and then the spider just bites his arm off, and he just bleeds to death. I, it just didn't feel like, it's great. In the book, it's what it is. There's a lot of things that you like and you don't, but the whole thing is phenomenal. But that's what was one thing that I wasn't crazy about. I did feel that dramatically we needed that. The fact that he's gone. I sort of worked a little bit of a passing of the torch into the plot, meaning if Eddie's gonna go, he has to leave something that is more important than whatever is in the book. So his experience that he has in the pharmacy with the hobo, where he's like, it's like what was he saying? Choking the whole one. For the first time, he realizes something that resonates with Mike and his investigation. When he said he got from the Shakopiwa natives, he got the idea that every living thing must abide by the laws of the shape they inhabit, which is something taken from the book, but it's not. It doesn't pay off in the book. So I grabbed it and I put it there, and it's like, okay, so Mike has been working on this idea, but he didn't. He says we have to attack it in its true form. True form is light. So if you put light into the dark, into darkness, it's just you kill it, and that's how we kill it. The other side of that is it incarnates in things that are scary for you, but that doesn't mean they are strong, right? In the case of Eddie, he's afraid of germs, of infection, of illness. The hobo is the worst thing. The leper, it's all like this, but he's not strong, right? So he discovers that by choking, he almost killed him, and that's a piece of information that Eddie before dying leaves to the group. He says, he was so weak, which the losers never thought of it as something I got weak, instead of like the power of unified belief. When everybody thinks a certain idea, it becomes real. That's why in the first movie you have the stun ball thing, where everybody's like, kill it, because they think that the stun ball is loaded, and the only one who knows it's not loaded is Mike. He says, it's not loaded. And Bill shoots and draws a hole there. I'm sidetracking a little bit, but I liked Eddie to go with a little more meaning, and he's basically passing the torch that sparks the big idea, which is we have to make him small and weak.
That was a very amorphous answer, but
Worked.
I hope it was satisfying.
That it worked.
So I think we're done with time, guys, but we're gonna go to the back.
Thank you very much.